James Huang. I am a technical product manager for Alexa for Business. It's great to see you guys here at the end of the day. And so this session is entitled, Can I Bring Alexa to Work? So spoiler alert, the answer is yes. We'll be talking about how and why and how to get all that working. But we'll start out with an old-time story of conference rooms. So back in the beginning, there were two remotes. And, right, like, you always had the wrong one somehow. You know, even though there should have been a 50-50 rule here going on, you always like, I got the wrong one to turn on the volume or the TV or whatever, and it always ended up delaying your meeting, right? And the strangest thing happened is that somehow over time, they fell in love and had children, because she just somehow collected more and more of the remotes, and it got harder and harder to find the right one. And they were kind of like children, because you'd lose one, and you're running around to the neighbors. Do you guys see the remote looks like this with the little cute green button on top? You know, and anyway, maybe that was just me. And then the touch panel came along, which was supposed to make things easier, but somehow it's more intimidating. People don't know how to use those or turn those on or get things going, right? And what that results in is lost productivity, right? This isn't such an old story after all. This is happening probably in conference rooms right now, where meetings are starting late. On average, studies are showing that meetings start late about 7 minutes. It's not just the remotes, but it's also like digging into your laptop to find the calendar entry and get the PIN code and figure out where to put the PIN code. Do I need special digits in front of the PIN code and all that good stuff, right? And if you translate that to the number of people that are in the meeting and you look at the man hours that are lost, it ends up adding up a lot. It's hundreds of millions of dollars annually are lost in just late meetings starting, right? And it gets compounded by the fact that every meeting room that you walk into tends to be a little bit different. It's got a different system in it, so you've got to sort of relearn it over and over again. Also, what's happening is that if you have really nice video conferencing equipment, when it's hard to start the meeting, people don't end up using it, so it's just wasted money sitting there. Wouldn't it be great if there was some sort of service, AWS service, that used Alexa to help you start your meetings on time? And so that's one of the really nice things that Alexa for Business can add right away, right out of the box, pretty much with some simple configuration. You can just say, Alexa, start the meeting.
Do you want to join the meeting AWS Summit?
Yes.
Okay, joining your meeting.
Oh, I forgot to switch the, sorry, I got to switch the output. Okay, so hey everyone, this is Erez from Polycom. Oh, oops. Can you go back on video?
Yeah, I'll get back in a second, sorry, it's a glitch.
Oh, all right, he hung up on it.
Okay, I'm back.
Erez?
Hey
Alexa?
Everybody, nice to meet you here.
Hold on, Erez, you hung up on it, so I'm going to start again. Alexa?
Nothing is currently playing.
Sorry. Alexa, start the meeting.
Do you want to join the meeting AWS Summit?
Yes.
Okay, joining your meeting.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
Hi, Erez.
Hey everybody, my name is Erez. I'm a product manager at Polycom. We're very excited to work with Amazon on integrating Alexa into our products. James is showing here a great demo using our group series. Feel free to come and talk with me about other products that are going to become available soon.
So Erez, speaking of other products, you guys made an announcement pretty recently about your intent to embed Alexa into the Trio.
Yeah, that's correct. We actually had a great demo with Amazon as part of the keynote in Enterprise Connect earlier in the month, where we showed Alexa services basically running on Trio. Trio is a conference phone from Polycom, and that allows me the capability to click on that button, say, Alexa, start my meeting. Now she's going to respond. But basically start the meeting right from there, and of course, develop more skills to enhance the meeting experience.
Very cool. Thanks, Arez. Appreciate the help.
Thank you.
Alexa, hang up.
Okay.
So that was pretty cool, right? What you saw right there was essentially using Alexa or Echo devices as a controller for the conferencing room equipment. So essentially, it's working in conjunction with a Polycom skill to drive the Polycom equipment, and it's using the Alexa for Business service to go into your calendar, and we support 3 different kinds: G Suite, On-Prem Exchange, and Office 365. So if you got any of those, you're covered. And it can actually pull out that PIN code, and that's what it did, right? All I said was start the meeting, and it did the rest, right, based off of the room calendar information. We used Polycom in this case. We also have compatibility or integration with Crestron and Cisco. And then you saw that in this particular demo, we used Amazon Chime. We also support a number of different web conference providers, such as BlueJeans, Skype for Business, Zoom Rooms, RingCentral Rooms, and WebEx. Okay. But what if you don't have all that fancy equipment? You maybe want to just enable a small huddle room or something like that, and you want to have that quick boost for smart conferencing. You can actually just stick an Echo device in your conference room and have it drive as a speakerphone join, basically dialing like a PSTN into that conference, right? So rather than have just a speakerphone, you could have an Echo speakerphone, right? And join the conferences automatically, just like I showed you. And the advantage of that is, of course, you could have additional skills on there as well, and we'll talk about that later. Sort of a third way that you could have conference joins is for users that are working from home. And we're, personally, I like to work from home as much as possible. I used to work in LA, so like the commute was like 2.5 hours each way. So, and sometimes you're on a call with the EU at like 6 a.m. your time or something like that, right? So it's a really nice benefit to be able to join a conference in that manner. So Alexa, what profile is this?
I'm not sure who's speaking, but you're in Awesome James' account.
Alexa, switch accounts.
Now in Amazon James' account.
Alexa, join the meeting.
Do you want to join the meeting call in from home?
Yes. Okay, so probably can't see this, but it's basically just dialing in to the Chime meeting as a speakerphone now. Alexa, hang up. So this is a really nice experience for workers, working from home as well. And so what Alexa for Business allows you to do is to have a BYOD model, where you could have your personal Amazon account at home, and you've got your Echo devices already at home. You can actually link that into your work organization. So you could basically be a BYOD user of Alexa. So you can not only do things like access your calendar, join meetings like we showed you without having to dig out like a PIN code and so forth, and also execute private skills that are just pertinent to your company. For example, you might have like an analytics skill that shows what are your week-over-week metrics for a given campaign or something like that. And we'll talk about how that skill distribution and building gets done. What we're showing here is the AWS console. This is the console for Alexa for Business, which is an AWS service. And you would just click on users on the left-hand side there, and you'd click on invite users, and you'd enter in the user's personal Amazon account information, their email address, to invite them into your work organization. Okay. When it is that situation, like Jane, who's working from home or whatever, she can go into her Alexa companion app. We're showing a screenshot of the mobile app there. And the way that it grabs the PIN code information and the dial-in information for the meetings is that she can enter in her own credentials for her work calendar on the mobile app. The only exception to this is Microsoft Exchange, where there's some additional setup that you have to do as a system. So the IT admin would have to help out with that as well. A cool thing too is that if you can actually restrict the enrolled user model so that like if you have workers from home and you're like worried about people accessing their Alexa device at home and getting access to their calendar or something like that, you can actually use an Alexa for Business security feature to require voice profiles be set up for their devices in order to access the calendar. So in other words, other people will not be able to access their calendar information or join the meetings that are scheduled on the calendar. But what if you wanted to enable a conference room, right? It's one thing to link a calendar when you're a human being and you can, I own my own calendar, I can enter in my own calendar credentials. But if it's a room, it doesn't belong to anyone in particular, it belongs to the company, right? So we need a way to essentially link the devices and the rooms to the calendars so that they can look up in the room calendar to see if there's a meeting scheduled, right? So the way you can do that is you can go into the Calendars tab on the left-hand side there, and once again, G Suite, Office 365, or Microsoft Exchange are supported. And you can basically, once you've set up your devices and provision them to your organization, okay, you can simply, in that room, and you see on the bottom there, there's an Echo Dot that's been provisioned to this specific room, or assigned to this room, and then you just specify the room calendar information. And in other words, this is the mailbox for that room. So it knows and it can go check and see if there's any meetings scheduled and grab the pin for you. Okay. Does that make sense? All right. So pretty cool stuff. It's pretty straightforward. And then you can also add a default provider. So let's say that your company uses Chime. You could set up Chime as the default provider so that if it didn't find anything on the calendar, it would just ask for the pin. You give it the pin verbally, and it would dial in for you. Okay. And so it's not just conferencing that we see the productivity boost around. We're seeing a lot of customers use Alexa around the workplace. They're building private skills for common, information, like what's the guest Wi-Fi password, or how do I contact the help desk or something like that. These are things that are like written down on pieces of paper and sort of taped to whiteboards, and they always fall off and nobody knows the answer to these questions. So you can just have Alexa answer these questions for you. We're also seeing partners developing skills for the workplace. So like Team has a room booking skill where you could say, hey, I want to book this conference room. Is it available? I want to extend my meeting time and so forth. And there's a lot of devices that are out in the market. There's just like more and more of these. You've got the Echo Dots, which are very affordable, and there's sales on these all the time. And these are great to deploy like everywhere, right? Like you could have these at printer stations and copiers to say like, hey, Alexa, we're out of toner. And have that integrate with your back-end ordering systems or your help desk or something like that, right? The taller devices, which are the Echo Plus and the Echo, those generally have better microphone arrays. So you could be like a farther distance away from them to talk to them. So those are probably good for your larger conference rooms. And then there's the screen form factor ones, like the Echo Show and the Echo Spot. I don't know if you guys have seen these, they're really cute. These are great for like office desks, right? Like they look good, and plus, like let's say you had it on an executive's desk, you could write a skill to show him his metrics, like how's my sales unit, doing? Like what's my month over month growth on X metric, They could have that displayed on the screen actually for them. So it's pretty cool stuff there. And all this is kind of cool. Alexa for Business, we started out with joining the meeting capability. You're seeing additional features coming out like shared address book calling. So essentially you can set up phone books for your conference rooms where you can say, hey, call help desk. Well, help desk means one number in one conference room and another number in another conference room, on the other side of the country maybe. So we give you the feature to do that calling PSTN by name, and also being able to sort of organize that across all your devices across your organization, right? So you're seeing these first-party functionality coming out. but what else can you do with it? Well, how do you extend Alexa functionality in general is through the use of what are called Alexa skills. And what these are is code that you can write that essentially builds on the Alexa skills kit. And the Alexa skills kit is nothing more than sort of a set of libraries that you can use, so you don't have to sort of write the binary equivalent of display this onto the screen. You can just say call a specific method that's like saying include this in the response, and you just pass it a string, right? Instead of having to code everything manually. It also gives you a developer console or an IDE where you can easily create these voice interaction models. So we're all familiar with public skills, probably use them a lot, Starbucks and Lyft and Domino's and so forth. And they have essentially, these companies have written skills for you, right, to consume. And those go to the Alexa Skills Store. It's a public repo that you can search. You can download skills onto your device and use those. And this momentum behind it is insane. There's 30,000 plus skills and growing. And I think Akarsha is like, what, tens of thousands of developers now for Alexa skills. Just huge momentum of all kinds of brand names that you recognize. The interesting thing that we're seeing now is that there's a shift where people are sort of concentrating on workplace skills, like team that we talked about, right? ServiceNow put out a white paper on how to write your own skills. We have Concur, who's in beta right now on a skill, and I forget what account I have this on, but Alexa, switch accounts. Can we get the volume on this guy? Sorry. Okay. Alexa. Alexa. Live demo land. Alexa, cancel. Okay. She's taking a nap. Well, Concur is building a skill, so you could do things like ask about your travel itinerary and things like that. I think she just woke up. Alexa, what profile is this?
I'm not sure who's speaking, but you're an awesome James account.
Okay. Alexa, ask Concur about my next flight.
Sure, I can help you with that. Where will you be next flight?
Alexa, cancel.
Okay, be sure to visit www.gethanker.com for the latest Hanker updates. Goodbye.
The acoustics are a little difficult. I'll try the remote. Alexa, ask Concur about my next flight. Oops. I think she was just about to say it. Alexa,
we are testing a
ask Concur about my next flight.
Sure, I can help you with that.
Alexa, cancel. I think the acoustics in here are a little bit
be sure to visit www.gethanker.com for the latest Hanker updates.
You're able to go and inquire about like your flights, your car reservations, and so forth. It's in beta right now, so that we're looking forward to more skills like that, which are workplace related. So we're seeing a lot of momentum in these public skills. And some of these are becoming workplace-oriented. But what if I have a skill that has to do, like we were talking about before, about like my own campaign metrics, or how did my changes go last night? Can you give me a report on, what are my top-selling items, or what are we low on in inventory? In this case, Capital One had a skill internally that they wrote to ask, how many critical incidents I have in a certain business unit. Right? We don't want this on the public skills store, right? So Alexa for Business has introduced a construct called private skills. And what that means, by its name, is that it allows you to keep your skills private to just your company, right? It's not going to be on the public skills store, and it also will not have to go through the full certification that takes, like 5+ days to make any given change, right? You're going to be using the same skills kit that you do to build a public skill. And the only difference is Towards the end of this, you're going to basically just be selecting that you want it to be a private skill right before you submit. Okay, and we'll look at that in a second. But let's take a look real quick at the skill structure. Here on the left, you have the user saying to an Echo device to tell the help desk that the projector is not working. And what's happening is that the Echo device is basically streaming that audio up to the cloud, where it's going through speech to text, and it's also going through a natural language understanding to understand, okay, he's saying something about the projector not working. This could be phrased in many different ways, right? Like I could say, hey, the projector's not working, or the projector isn't working, or the projector is broken, right? So it's the NLU's job to kind of figure all that stuff out and map it to a specific intent, okay? And that intent is then just passed to your skill that you're writing in a JSON payload, okay? And that JSON payload has that intent in there. As you can see, that can be written in a Lambda function, AWS Lambda function, which is AWS's serverless programming construct. Or it could be on your own web stack, anything that supports HTTPS, right? Could receive that information. And then you could integrate that with your backend systems. Let's say it's like a help desk thing, like we were saying, tell the help desk the projector is broken. It could then pass that off to Zendesk or ServiceNow or something like that on the backend. The advantage, of course, of using Lambda is that it's already got some really great integration with a lot of different products. It opens up that whole AWS ecosystem to you, and you can use IAM controls for your security, right? Like you don't have to embed credentials in your web stack. You can just give it an IAM role, and you're good to go, right? So when you develop this skill, you're basically going to build it using the Alexa Skills Kit, and you're basically just going to decide at that point whether you want to publish that live in the public domain or you want to just assign to your company. And this is what we'll just do a kind of a quick step through what that looks like. You're going to create the skill in the same manner as you did before with a public skill. And what you're seeing here is the beta developer console, which has support for Alexa for Business. So if you see like the sort of orange and black theme, that's the old console, and it does not have the GUI support for private skills. But the new, the sort of like modern looking one does have that support. So you're basically going to create the skill the same way, creating a custom skill, giving it an invocation, and that invocation is basically what's going to trigger your specific functionality, right? So if I say, Alexa, ask Lyft to start a ride, then it's going to go to the Lyft skill. If I say, in this case, ask the concierge for the guest Wi-Fi password, it's going to go to my private skill for the concierge, right? And then the intent, like in this case, you see here that I've given Alexa a number of different combinations of ways that this could be asked for. Now, this is, you might be looking at this saying, hey, this is not like artificial intelligence, right? You're like literally telling it what it should expect. But these are just some ideas of what it can expect, right? She'll figure out the rest. You just have to give her a handful of ways that things could be said so that she gets the idea, right? And she can build that language model around it. Once that's built, you then go to the backend Lambda function, for example, that you're building this in. And we have starter templates available in what are called blueprints. So if you go to the Lambda console and you click on blueprints, you can actually search in the type down there. You notice I've typed down Alexa, and it's come up with a bunch of different Alexa-related Lambda functions. So this can sort of help jumpstart your development. Blueprints are slowly sort of phasing into the new model that we have, which is the serverless application repository, where you can actually upload your own Lambda functions and have them discoverable by other companies. And once you have that, you'll basically set a trigger on the left-hand side under the Lambda function. You'll highlight that. You'll add a trigger on the left-hand side. You'd click on Alexa Skills Kit, and that would add a trigger to say, this Lambda function is basically invoked by Alexa, okay? And then you can actually specify, for security purposes, the skill ID. Each skill has a specific ID string to it. You can actually provide that ID string to that trigger so that only your skill can invoke this back-end logic. Okay. Then once you've got that Lambda saved and it's working, you've tested it, you can take that ARN for the Lambda, the identifier for that piece of back-end code, and plug it into your developer console to say, okay, when the skill gets invoked, you call this business logic on the back end that I've pointed to, okay? And a lot of people kind of wonder, like, okay, why do I have to have an AWS account, and then I also have to have an Amazon developer account, right? Like, it seems sort of inconvenient to have the two. The Alexa team really wants to have this decoupled to strongly say, you know, the front end, the language logic and so forth should be very separate from, you know, your business logic, your implementation. That's a totally different function. So that's sort of the reasoning behind that. But it's kind of a nice decoupling when you think about it, and we'll show you in a little bit when we start looking at like just modifying the code. It lets you be pretty agile about things. So the cool thing that I really love about the new developer console is that it gives you the ability to test your code real time. So once you've got it in dev mode, you can actually type the invocation into that little text box up on the upper left. And what you're seeing is on the left panel of the JSON input is what gets converted and sent to your skill. So you can actually literally copy paste what is in the left side input and create a Lambda test case input so that you don't need to invoke it from Lambda to test it anymore. You can just copy that input as a test case and then just iterate on it using that input, right, in your Lambda function console. And then on the right is the JSON output that goes out from your skill. So you can see, okay, is my skill creating the right formatted output? You'll also notice that it has a little microphone on there. So if you wanted to, you could actually use it in lieu of an Echo device and actually speak to the browser. So that, I think it's really cool. Also, not shown here is that it also shows you, like if you have Echo Show or Spot, it'll actually show you like little renderings of the card output, of the graphical output. So that's really cool. One other thing I want to point out is that there's an intent in the JSON that I've highlighted on the input side. That's Alexa figuring out, based on what I said, which was ask the concierge about the guest Wi-Fi, it sort of boiled that down to someone's asking about the Wi-Fi, right? And that's where you see the intent name of ask Wi-Fi. Okay. So that's kind of like the advantage of using Alexa to figure all this out. Instead of using, like, some people are interested in literal slots, and a literal slot is basically like, I just want to know exactly what the user said, and I want you to pass that to my backend function. That's cool in some ways, because you know exactly what they said, and you can sort of, you know, fine-tune your business logic based on what they said. But the disadvantage of that is that you're missing out on all the sort of NLU that Alexa is doing for you. So you're going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting yourself. You're going to have to handle, you know, the printer is broken, the printer's broken, I've got a broken printer. You have to, like, you know, like a million different case statements or something like that. Okay, cool. So let's take, the other way that you could test is you could test live on your device and just ask, what is the guest Wi-Fi password? And let's see if she's listening. Alexa, ask the concierge for the guest Wi-Fi.
The guest Wi-Fi password is AB123.
Okay, so something went wrong because I wanted the guest Wi-Fi password ABC123, and she said ABK, right? So this is, the reason for that is because she's trying to speak it as a word, right? So Alexa does support SSML tags. In this case,
Sorry,
we can...
I'm not sure.
Sorry. In this case, we can use the say as tags that I want this spelled out. If there's a Wi-Fi password, I don't want you to try and pronounce it somehow. I want you to say each letter separately. So you can say as, interpret as characters, and that will work. Oh, actually, I don't have my laptop set up for that. Okay, so that's how you do that. And just so you know, there's also SSML tags that you can use to sort of make your skill more personable and have sort of more fun with it, more casual and natural feeling when you're interacting with it. In this case, we're showing a say as tag, which is using interpret as interjection. These are also called sort of like speech cons. So I might want her to go like maybe your sales metrics are up or something like that. And at the end of that, if you detect that things are going up, she goes woohoo or something like that. So she won't just go woohoo. So she'll be excited about that. So there's a number of different speech cons that are built in to Alexa. All right, so let's say that you've got it all tested and it's working well. How do I then mark it as I want this to be a private skill, right? So on the availability tab on the left-hand side there, you can then select either it's going public on the top or on the bottom as a private skill for Alexa for Business Organizations. Okay. So for our private skills, we're going to choose Alexa for Business and then submit it, right? If you submitted it as a public skill, it would go through that formal certification review process. If you submit it as a private skill, that does not go through that formal process. We assume that you own and have tested and vetted the code before submitting it. And that allows you to be more agile, right? Like if you need to make a change, you're really just waiting for a propagation. The most that you'll see is like an hour and a half or something like that for it to go to live stage and take effect. Okay. Once that skill reaches live stage, you can then distribute it or whitelist it to different companies. And the way you do that is in the developer console, you can click on Manage Access, and then basically you're just providing a string that has the AWS account for that Alexa for Business organization. And so what is an Alexa for Business organization? It's basically just, you can think of it as if I work for a specific company, I work for Amazon, then I'll have an Amazon Alexa for Business organization. So it could just be like one single AWS account, Alexa for Business organization, and I could just point all of my skills to that one organization, right? If you're a very large organization, and let's say, oh, well, this business unit wants control over their own devices. They have a totally separate IT admin staff. They don't want, my team messing with their skills and so forth. Then you can actually set up separate organizations for that, even within one company. So you basically whitelist them like that. Once you've whitelisted them, this is going back into the AWS console now in Alexa for Business as the IT admin of the receiving the skill, essentially. You then basically have the opportunity to review those skills. So you see on the Skills tab on the left-hand side that we've basically selected a tab called Private Skills. It's essentially like the skills store, only you're only seeing on the private skills side those skills that have been whitelisted or distributed to your organization. Okay? And then you can review them one by one and enable them if they look good. Okay? Once they get enabled, you can then decide what devices they go on to. Like I might have some skills with like we showed like the concierge, which is telling me what the guest Wi-Fi password is. That can go to everything, right? Like I don't care, it can go to the public conference rooms, executive conference rooms. But I might have one that's, like the hire fire report or the analytics skills that I don't want in the public domain so that I can just whitelist those specifically to the devices in executives' offices and things like that, right? You also have control over what skills get enabled for BYOD users. Once again, if they're working from home, maybe you don't want your most sensitive data being accessed from home, right? So you can actually control that through the Alexa for Business security framework. And the way you would indicate that on a skill is by simply checking the box to say that it's available to your BYOD or enrolled users. And then for the enrolled users, like let's say that I've got an Amazon account at home and I've been whitelisted into the organization, and so I can work from home now and use the Alexa skills that are pertinent to my corporation. What they'll see is there's actually a section for your skills, and under private skills, they can select that skill that got enabled for them, or distributed to them rather. And then they can simply go drill down on that and click that big blue button that says enable, and that'll let them use that skill. One of the cool things that you'll notice here is that it's got like a corporate briefing. So one of the really neat use cases that I like a lot is the idea of a flash briefing. And you've seen these for like CNN and Time and whatever, where you get like the updates on the news. Well, you could have that for your own business, right? Like, so if your C-level staff wants to give updates on the health of the business and they want to have that personal touch, they can actually record a video that gets put into a flash briefing. So your users will say, hey, give me the flash briefing, and they'll get the latest updates on how the company is doing. Or this could be specific to a BU, or you could have it specific to your job function, right? Like if your job function is pushing out changes, you could have the flash briefing include how the changes went in last night. You know, if there were any problems, it could integrate in with your ServiceNow status and things like that. Looking at the distribution to a shared device now, like a conference room, how does that get enabled? So I've got this Orion conference room that I set up here where I was showing you before, where we had the dot enabled and it was able to join the conference. Well, I can basically include skill groups, which are just bundles of skills, and assign them to rooms. So I could say basically, I have a bundle of skills that are sort of public domain skills that like I don't really, not really data sensitive in any way. And then I might have some that are executive skills, right? Like that only executives should get access to, and I can assign those to the executive conference rooms. We feel like we're really just getting started on this journey. We just launched this service in November at reInvent last year. We're seeing already a lot of growth. Really interestingly, hotels are using this, and that kind of struck me as unusual at first. I was like, I didn't really wrap my, I always thought of this more as an enterprise framework, but when you think about it, hotels are essentially like companies with like, each hotel room is sort of acting as a conference room, and they have the need to basically manage the Alexa experience for their users, right? So it makes total sense. We're seeing that also for senior living communities where they want to have that manageability of the Alexa experience. Field operations is another one. Anywhere where you need that sort of hands-free experience, or quite frankly, like even in a situation where you don't have access to a specific device, like I don't want to take out my laptop and open it up and like log into the VPN and open up the trouble ticket system, and figure out the CTI for how to submit a problem report, right? I can just say, Alexa, the crane arm is broken. And it'll figure out where your location is based off of the Alexa for Business location service. That's another thing I wanted to mention too, is that so Alexa skills natively, if you permit it, if the user permits it, can discover the address of a user. Like, so this works for like Domino's, right? I wanted to order a pizza, it automatically knows what my address is. Well, that's great for an address, but once you get inside of a company building, how do you know what room they're in, right? Like, how do you know what section of the factory floor they're on? And that's what Alexa for Business has an API called Resolve Room. So it will actually tell you, like your skill can call Alexa for Business to find out where the user is calling from, what room or what location they're calling from. So it gives a richer context, and they don't have to say that out loud. We're also seeing this for training and, of course, for office assistant use cases like we were talking about before, situations where you want to get metrics. Literally, we have executives walking into conference room meetings with like a binder under their arm of like all these metrics. And rather than have them do that, like, it's much easier to be able to just say, Alexa, what are my week-over-week metrics for this campaign or something like that. Also for project management, like we were talking about. Wayfinding is a really cool one too. Like if you can imagine, like you go into a new building that you haven't been in before and you're like, oh, my meeting's in, the EWalk conference room. Like, great, where is the EWalk conference room? So it's great to have like wayfinding type utilities, like skills where you can basically just ask the name of the conference room and it can give you directions. And of course, being able to start meetings on time. We really believe that voice is the next major disruption in computing. Like you've seen that sort of progress from punch cards to keyboards to mouse clicks and things like that. We really see voice as being the next wave on how we relate to computers in just a more natural way, right? It lets you index quickly into the information that you want instead of having to sort of open up all this equipment and like click and press and go through menus, right? You just ask for what you want. So we encourage you to get started with us. The Alexa Skills Kit repo is a great place to start if you've never worked with Alexa skills before at all. On top of that, we have an Alexa for Business repo that has specific stuff for the workplace. Like we have an example in there of how to do like a resolve room where you want to do a help desk thing and you want to post the result to Chime or Slack or something like that. We also encourage you to write your own code and share it, right? The serverless app repo is a great way to do that. You can post your Lambda backend business logic code there, and you can also link it to your own GitHub repo so that once you post it, people can automatically find it. Like they'll just type in Alexa, and then they'll see your backend Lambda, and they'll be able to deploy it on their own. So it's a great way to share that with the community. And so this is an example of how that looks. So like before I showed you the AWS console for Lambda and how you would just select blueprints, you would just instead select serverless app repo and then you could find your Alexa skills there. And just wanted to say that we're really excited about this and we're definitely eager to see what you guys build and behind what you're building in the workplace. Looking forward to what you guys do. I think we've got some time for questions, so any questions? Yes?
Yeah, it's a great presentation.
Thank you.
So you talked about taking the Alexa device at an enterprise level and,
Yes.
Moving it to a public domain as a public place like an office or hotel. So now that brings in another aspect to the development of a skill.
Yes.
How do we test it? Because before we deploy this device in the public domain,
Yes.
we got to test this device in and out. So we're talking about different accents, different pronunciations, different
Yeah,
grammar.
absolutely. No, that's a very good question. Yeah. So if you look at the developer experience when you're developing an Alexa skill, there's a dev stage and a live stage. So it's not actually hitting your users until it's live stage. So you can still test using your dev stage skill. Let me just get to that screen. Actually, I'll open up my laptop in a second and show you the live version of it. But essentially, you see the very top left button there? That's basically enabling you to test before it goes to live. So it's enabling this sort of testing in the console. So the new beta console, accents is a big one. I have a coworker that I used to work with, and he's developing Alexa skills now. He said he actually ended up using Polly, Amazon Polly, to generate the voices to test to unit test, right? Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy, right? Because he has a pretty thick accent. But you don't have to do that anymore because now you can actually type the utterance, right? Like you could that little text box right there lets you type in what you would have said.
No, yeah, that's great. I mean, what I meant was, can I have some sort of automated testing, which would whatever your friend.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Generate different words and different sentences.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Automatically fine-tune my Alexa.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. Okay, so two parts of an answer to this question. One is like the sort of the larger Alexa scope. Alexa is, like they say, Alexa is getting smarter all the time. That's not just a catchphrase. We actually take machine learning, like we basically take like hits and misses of words, and that's why it's like really important that Alexa is now moving into the business domain, because like a lot of the things that people say in a business environment is totally different than what they would say in a personal environment. So, you know, the more usage that it gets in a workplace, essentially it's going to get better at picking up what those things are. So that's one thing. That's just happening behind the scenes. You don't have to do anything for that. But as far as like an automated testing suite, you know, really I think the closest that you would have to being able to like throw different phrases at it is through using something like this, you know, where you can actually throw different text combinations at the skill. One of the things that on the Alexa side as well that's coming, that they've talked about is the ability to provide like a sort of a report of what people have been saying to your skill, like sort of like the literal utterances, because there might be situations where you have a skill and you expected them to say, you know, what's the guest Wi-Fi and what's the bus shuttle, right? Like for like a sort of a tech bar you have in a common area, but they could have been asking like totally things like you didn't even think about, right? Like, you know, I'm locked out. Yeah, whatever that is, right? Like, so you need a way to sort of discover it. We've heard that feedback, and so that's something that that's being looked at right now. Yeah. Yes.
Can we use these sensitive data, let's say, for healthcare?
Yeah, so it's not, A4B Alexa in general is not HIPAA certified at this point in time, but we are seeing healthcare organizations use Alexa skills in their environments, but just maybe not with like PHI data included in that right now. I think that's something that's being sort of looked at right now and iterated on. We're definitely interested in feedback on that sort of thing. Yes, there's a question.
So if you're putting Alexas in common areas and they're not assigned to a person, is there any thought or effort going into identifying the person based on maybe the proximity of the cell phone?
Yep.
An ID?
Absolutely, yeah, no, that's a great question. So in general, Alexa has announced identity like through voice profile that's coming to developers of skills. So essentially, like when I speak, if I've got a voice profile in the system, I'll have a speaker ID that's sent along with the request to your skill. So you'll basically know who it is that's requesting it. So that's one aspect. And then, you know, absolutely, Alexa for Business, you know, our team hears feedback like this a lot. It's kind of, you know, enterprise scenarios. So that's something that, you know, we're listening to. I mean, I think that's one of the nice things about AWS in general is that we take over 90% of our roadmap from our customers. So you can be sure that if a lot of people are asking for it, it's something that's being looked at. Yeah. That's okay. What's that?
The voice profile?
Yes.
Do you have a timeline yet?
Well, voice profile actually already exists, like I was mentioning, for a calendaring restriction. And like I said, through Alexa for Business, you can actually enforce that it must be, like the user must have a voice profile set up in order to access your corporate calendar. We don't really have a timeline for the voice profile for Alexa in general, but it is in private beta right now. That's unfortunately closed right now. I don't think they're taking any new people, but it's getting towards the end of that cycle. Yeah, the next step would be a public beta. The other, sorry, others, over there. I think he was. Oh, sorry. Yes.
They're a pretty popular consumer device. Is there any thought about how you protect them from walking away?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. There have been some of our customers that have been actually like building like brackets and things like that to bolt them down. And there are manufacturers that do sell those sorts of things. One of the other things that we're looking at is, you know, like ways to surface up metrics to show like, or, you know, device state and so forth, so that you can see like, oh, this device just sort of like popped up on the radar again somewhere else or something like that. So it's something that we're talking about. Yes?
You had mentioned the executive conference room and having skills enabled for that conference room. Is it possible to have those skills enabled, if you don't have an executive conference room,
Yes.
have those skills enabled based on the participants in the meeting?
That's something that we hear about as well, as far as identity, and that's sort of gonna follow behind, right? Like the basic foundational identity technology, right? Like, so as we get more mature on voice profiles and some of the multiple factors of identity, that's something that we'd be certainly interested in as well.
Where you invited people like in your calendar, and then those skills
Oh.
get triggered by the attendees that are going to be in the meeting.
Oh, that's very interesting. Oh, okay, that's an interesting idea, as sort of like a low-tech way to, yeah. No, that's interesting. Thanks. That's something that we'll take into consideration feedback-wise. Anyone else? Yes.
What other languages does it support?
So currently we do support all of the Alexa-supported languages. I believe right now, if I'm not mistaken, that's U.S. English. It's got UK English, German. I want to say Japanese as well. I have to double check myself on that. But Alexa for Business itself is right now just available in the U.S. Yeah.
So it's not supporting Chinese or Korean?
Chinese is not supported right now. I'll have to double check on Korean for you. If you give me your contact information, I can follow up with you on that. But definitely not Chinese yet. I think part of the problem is, right, like this is a very heavy lift for that natural language understanding, right? Because especially for Chinese, where there's like, you've got Chinese people that don't understand each other from region to region. So like, there's so many dialects of spoken Chinese. I think that's something that has accents. Like if I have a New York accent or a Texas accent, you need a lot of samples. And so for Chinese, like it's just a heavier lift. It's not to say that we're not interested, but it's not there right now.
Okay, so but for accents, like a New York accent, Texas accent,
Mm-hmm.
you were improve by yourself, or you have to do it?
You don't have to, yeah, you don't have to do any of the training. We're doing that training behind the scenes for you. And that's why, like, even for, just getting into the sausage making, but like even when we develop like a managed skill, like a functionality, we want to make sure that it's got like a very high hit rate of success. So even for US English, if we have a new functionality, we test it quite a bit to make sure that the language model is working. Yeah. Yes?
For the audio flash briefing skills,
Yes.
it would be in the future or right now a way to schedule the updates, because with the skills, you either update weekly, daily, or hourly. If there will be a way to just schedule all their updates, let's say for a month, and they will automate it, upload on the skills.
Yeah, there's not really like a lot of tooling for that right now in terms of like out of the box, as you've seen. But it's basically just grabbing assets off of like an S3 bucket or something like that. So it should be something that you can sort of automate with your own CI/CD tooling, right? Just hey, whenever I get something from ServiceNow, I go query it and I go update the assets, and I update the JSON file that drives the flash briefing, right? Yeah, so that'd probably be the way to handle that. Yes, sir. Where did the what? Oh, the visual output. Yeah, so for a shared device right now, we only are supporting the headless devices, like the Echo, like the Dot and so forth, and the Echo and the Echo Plus. The reason is that the provisioning technology behind the two devices is totally different. So we're very interested in, obviously, the display ones also being included in our supported device lineup right now.
And it had cards, you just weren't
Correct. Yeah. So and that's the way anyway. Like when you're developing a skill, right? You're gonna basically overload it so that it'll have the card response. But if it doesn't have the card response, it'll just basically play the audio stream.
Sort of related question. If you have account linking,
Yes.
how does that work?
Yeah, so account linking, like for, like, and he's asked a question about account linking, like, so if I have Lyft or Domino skill or something like that, I want it to know that it's me whenever I use it. So basically you can, the people who write the skill can include this concept called account linking, so that prompts the user the first time they use the skill, they get a prompt to enter in their credentials for Lyft or their credentials for Domino, and from that point on, it just associates that account. So for shared devices, though, right, like there's no user per se, right? But what we do surface up in the Alexa for Business console a way for you to enter in account linking for that specific room. It may not make sense in some scenarios, right? Like Lyft or Domino's or something like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But for some sort of specific scenario where for your private skills where you want it to sort of be authenticated as a given user, like someone's office or something like that.
Per room only, so the account is only done ascribed.
Correct, for the room. Yep, yeah. So that lets you have that separation, right? Like, so if you actually wanted to have a shared device in a specific person's office, you could account link it for them, for example. Yeah. Yes.
So how is the device or asset managed when it comes to an enterprise situation? Is it like I just buy an Alexa?
Yes, you can just buy an Alexa device, and let me go to that screen real quick. Goes back a little ways. Sorry about this. Trying to find the right slide. Oh, oops. Okay. Yeah. So you could just buy any device, and then essentially you'll click on Set Up Devices in the AWS Alexa for Business console. Once you click on that, it's basically going to download an exe, a binary that you can run on Windows, and that'll actually do, like, when you do it manually and you provision like a dot or something like that, you're essentially connecting to Wi-Fi and basically setting it all up with an account and so forth. So it's doing all of that behind the scenes for you with this binary.
My question was
Yes.
actually in terms of the product warranty, because when it's an office asset, the vendor generally provides a warranty for that, and if there is any upgrade, device upgrades, it takes care of the license, stuff like that.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Your Alexa device is becoming an office asset.
Interesting.
So is that like different?
Yeah, no, it's basically the same. I mean, in some ways, some customers really like the fact that it's just the same as like any other, just buying it off the shelf, because it means that they can get it really quickly, right? You can just get it on Prime now and get it the same day or something like that. But that's good feedback. Having, flipping it to the concept of an actual company asset, like a laptop or something like that, and having sort of special purchasing conditions around it.
That's actually an office asset. Right? The vendor, the Polycom actually provides service on that
Sure.
in terms of software upgrade or hardware upgrade or product upgrade.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, possibly it's, there's less to be done with an Echo device. It's like, the software updates and stuff happen over the air and they're automatic. But that's interesting feedback. So, thank you. Yeah. Any other questions at all? All right, great. Well, I'll be here for a few minutes after as well if there's anything remaining. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.